Hey, I'm Jeffrey Hayzlett, chairman of the C-Suite Network and host of All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV, and author of the best-selling book, The Hero Factor, Putting People Above Profits. Great to be here.
And Jeffrey, what's the best or the worst advice you ever got?
And the best advice I ever gotten in my life in business is keep your mouth shut and listen more.
That's the best advice? You got that advice, Jeff? I can't imagine you keeping your mouth shut, dude. You're the most outspoken guy I know. How's that work?
You know, I like to speak out on most things, but I've always found that when you listen, one of the biggest things I've learned over time is I'm not aware of what I'm not aware of. And so many times if you just listen and you'll hear everything play itself out in front of you in terms of when you're in a C-suite of a Fortune 100 company or a 10 company or a brand new start out, because our biggest thing that we have to do in business every day is not be the smartest person in the room, but be the most strategic person. At least that's the job of a C-suite executive. And so I've learned a long time ago is just to sit there and listen, and you'll watch the cards play out pretty quickly.
Ooh, so most strategic instead of most smart. So tell me about that, Jeffrey. How does that help? How does strategy help?
I'm not the smartest guy.
Oh, same, dude, right? Yeah, surround yourself with great people, but talk to me about strategy.
Yeah, well, strategy, I think, is what we're hired for. I think that's what we get paid the most for. I think that's where the greatest value is. And if you're a leader of your business, I think that's where you have to concentrate is, what problem are we solving and what's the best way for us to get there, and to be thinking about those chess moves far enough in advance to watch them play out. And so, or to, strategically place your players in places to make that play out. And I think that's our job. And so you can't always, you can do that a little bit from the front, but you can't always do that from the front. Sometimes you do have to sit in that office and do the right things. I live every single day by my simple mantra that was also taught to me was automate, delegate, eliminate, in terms of my day every day. Because I like the doing of things. But if you're in that strategic role, if you're in that C-suite role, sometimes you can't be getting your hands dirty the way you'd like to do and on everything. So you got to get your hands dirty on the strategy in terms of making sure that you're, bulldozing the path for everybody else to get there faster and taking out those obstacles.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a darn good leader to me. So with that, was that the impetus for the Hero Factor, or what was kind of the genesis behind that?
Well, I got to tell you, so a number of years ago, I had my own show on Bloomberg. It was a primetime television show called The C-Suite. And during that time period, I had somebody who was calling me all the time. His name was Rob Ryan. So Rob Ryan is a billionaire. He sold his company for $24.6 billion back in 1996, Ascent Communications, to a company called, Lucent Technologies. And so when he sold that company, he decided to set aside a percentage of the company for all of his employees, making the greatest number of millionaires ever created in one day. It's amazing. And all these people would come up to him and say, hey, you're my hero. And he didn't feel like a hero. He just was a guy who was trying to do his right thing. And, it wasn't in the agreement, didn't have to set that money aside. He just thought it was the right thing to do. And so then he said, well, how can I help other people? What can I do to have other people do the same thing I did? So he started this group called the Hero Club. And he started to teach people how to do it and built it into about 27 members at the time. Well, he started calling me after I left the show and started the C-Suite Network. And I was still doing the Bloomberg show at that time, still, helping them and doing a few gigs here and there. And I was covering the Rocky Mountain Economic Summit. And I just finished up, and this Rob Ryan had been calling me. And so here I was on stage. I stepped off stage, took my earpiece out, and I see him coming for me. And I think, oh my gosh, here he's coming. And I thought I've been ignoring his calls because I thought he was asking me for a contribution for like one of the politicians, because he was known to do that too. And so the way he got this about this far from my face, and then he stuck a finger in my chest and said, give me $1. And I'm thinking, what the hell does a billionaire need $1 for? And I thought, well, maybe he needs a soda or something. So I reached in my pocket and I pulled out $1 and gave him $1. And he said, you just bought the Hero Club, which I said, what the F is the Hero Club? And then he told me what it was. And I said, well, that's unique. And then he gave me a copy of his book. He said, would you read the book? And would you consider taking it over? And so that night I read the book, and I texted him in the morning and said, yes, I want to do this. I want to lead it. And then I drove out to Yellowstone, where not the ranch, the park. and I went fly fishing for the day. And it's about a 4-hour drive from where I was at, and then 4 hours back. So I had a lot of FaceTime. So as I was thinking about this club and about this, mastermind group that he had at the time, I thought, well, what could I do? And so what we did was I started looking more and more about what are hero leaders and what are the kind of leaders that lead these companies and what set them apart from everybody else. And it was basically values. And I found out that if you lead your company with values, we found out that they gross more money, they make more money, they have employees who are more engaged. In a world in today's where 53% to 58% of the employees aren't even engaged in the business, couldn't tell you what the mission or values are of the company. They had vendors who wanted to do business with them. And then, of course, Phil, you know this all too well for the companies that you represented and many that you've had on this show, that when they walk through the community, people go, there goes a hero leader. You know who those businesses are in your town and your community. And so that's what we strove to do. So I put together this book, which is all about, how great leaders transform organizations and create winning cultures, and about putting, people above profit. And so that's what we did. And we've now expanded the Hero Club by about 150, not 15, about 150 fold. So, and it's become a fast growing group and one of our biggest groups in the C-Suite network. And we get together on a regular basis, monthly basis, and CEOs help other CEOs solve problems. They give each other counsel, not advice. Advice is given by people who've never done it before. Counsel is given by people who have been there. And that's what it's about. It's a place where, the CEOs can come, take off the armor that you have sometimes, that little facade that you have to have, or that steel outer shell that you have to have, and really, get real and have real great conversations about scaling their businesses.
Wow. Well, lots there to unpack, Jeffrey. Let's talk first about the word hero, though, right? Because hero is a big word, man. I mean, we think about hero. Some people think about a superhero, Iron Man, or or Captain America, and some people hero, right? Like maybe their mom or their dad. So define hero, Jeffrey, as you're talking about it here.
Well, heroes are just people who are recognized for doing the right thing. And they didn't go out and seek it. They didn't want it. They didn't say, oh, I'm going to be a hero today. I'm going to wake up and be a hero. It's none of that. And it's not fictitious. It's real people doing real things for the right reasons. And that's really, truly what it is. And we all know those heroes when we see them, whether they're in the military or they're in business or they're first responders. But, we have a lot of people who are business, first responders. We have a lot of people who are leading businesses and doing it in great, great ways, and helping people to achieve their hopes, dreams, and aspirations, helping put their kids through college, helping pay the bills for for their family members, or get adequate health care, all those things that are so critical and still appreciative by other people. And so that's what a hero is.
Awesome. Everybody has the potential then to be a hero, which I like.
Without question. I mean, absolutely. You would hope in the right, but it's truly, Phil, I think you see this in business every day. It's when you see people who are value-based, it's very clear what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it makes it so much easier for the rest of the company, because you don't have to second guess things. Everybody knows that that person that's on the line can say, no, our quality isn't right on this product. We need to pull it, right? You don't need to send it out to somebody, have a customer send it back. You can make those key decisions. And so that's really what it's about. It's a value-based, and there's different kinds of, I described this on, I think it's page 12. I'm going to look it up to make sure, but I'm sure it's page 12. Yep, that's exactly what it is. On page 12, I actually put together a little chart that says these are the kind of companies that we have, because we do. We have the good company, the companies that are every single day that say, hey, this is what it is. And my graph here is operational excellence, and then it's based on integrity and values on this side. And way over here, let's see if I can do it. That's that hero company. And right in the middle is that good company. And then you have those that wannabes. Then you have do-gooders. Do-gooders. They want to do the right thing for the right reasons, but can never get out of a wet paper sack to help themselves. Because if you don't have operational excellence, if you don't make money, it's great that you're a do-gooder, but you can't get it done. You've got to have the money to make it. And then, of course, way up over here, you have that really, truly the bottom liners. And then you have those zeros, what I call the ass hats, right? You know what I'm talking about. They have no values. and no operational. They just suck the living life out of you as companies. And these are the companies. And this is what I call the hero factor scale. And you can actually take a little test to say, hey, where you're at. And it's interesting when we've had companies take the test to find out what is their hero factor, the CEOs tend to rate themselves lower than what the employees rate them. And I've always found that to be very interesting. But you can have operational excellent company high on operational performance. Let's take like a GE or Walmart. They measure it to the nanosecond. They're got RFID IDs on tags on everything, measuring this, and this. But yet they don't have high values. That doesn't mean they're not great companies, because they're good companies, right? But they're doing it for the bottom line. They're doing it for the almighty dollar, which is okay. That's if you want to run your business that way, just like if you want to be an asshat, if you want to be an asshat and you want to run your business like that, good. Be the best that you possibly can so everybody knows not to do business with you. But that's really what it is. And so it's a cross between the operational values and your operational excellence. And I think that's really where we want. And the best place to be is be real great operators and have really great values. Those are what we find to be hero businesses.
Wow. So Jeffrey, what are some of those values that make these companies really stand out? I mean, I know that you talk about a lot of them in the book. You got lots of case studies, but is there similarities here in the values that you found?
Wow. There are. I mean, they're core to who they are, regardless of what they are. All right. So let's be clear, because you and I grew up differently, and both in great ways. But I'm sure we have some similar values, but we probably have some different values. But the key thing about most of it is that most of these companies put people above profits. That they say, we're going to take care of the people that work for us, and we're going to take care of the people that we serve. And we're also going to serve the community that we're in, or whatever those communities are. So the core value around most of those companies, almost to a T, is taking care of the values of those audiences and groups that they touch and feel. And by the way, vendors are included in that as well. So now, but at the same time, they might be different than yours or mine. Let me give you a good example. When two black men walked into a Starbucks a number of years ago, and they sat down in Philadelphia, the manager came over after a while and said, "Are you going to buy something?" They go, "Yeah, we'll get to it." And they said, "Well, you either buy something now or get out." And they said, "Well, we got somebody coming. We'll have an appointment. We're coming." "Well, if you don't buy something now, I'm calling the cops on you." And the manager called the cops on these two black men. Now, any one of us know, if you've ever been to a Starbucks, you can sit there all freaking day and not buy a donut, not buy a cup of coffee or whatever, because the values of the company is that they're basically a community gathering place. And they just happen to sell coffee. They happen to sell music. They happen to sell, some breakfast stuff and some little nibbles and some other things they pop in a microwave. I mean, that's what they do. All right. And that's what they're about. And so this manager violated their values because he said they were two black men who were loitering and so forth and so on. Now, maybe he didn't mean black men. Maybe he just meant men, or maybe he just meant two people. I don't know. But that was the perception. I think we all know what happened. Howard Schultz then shut the company down for an entire day and, got back to the core values, right? The values of what makes their company great. Okay, that's great. Now, let's go take Kathy Truitt, or Truitt Kathy. He's the founder of Chick-fil-A. Now, I don't know if you know this, but, they make a really great chicken sandwich. All right, I love it. I think a lot of people love that sandwich. All right, I grew up in the South, and was a staple. You go to Chick-fil-A. It was kind of a rite of passage. But if you wanted to go on a Sunday, you can't go on a Sunday. Why? Because he believes that's the day of the Sabbath, and his religious beliefs are we don't open on Sunday. And by the way, he closes every single of his locations. He said that's the day of rest. That's the day it was going to be. Now, that's his value that he put forth. Now, I might not agree with that. Now, there's another value that he believes in that I don't agree with. And that value is he doesn't believe in same-sex marriage. And he's been very, very vocal about it. Now, you can choose as a customer to frequent his place or not frequent. But I think last I heard, that the freedom of religion and freedom of choice was something that was afforded in the Constitution. I don't necessarily agree with his position in any way, shape, or form. And if I had a political candidate, I would support that political candidate that had the opposite view of Mr. Truitt, right? or Mr. Kathy. I always forget his name is Truitt, Kathy Truitt. But anyway, but nonetheless, that's not going to stop me from going and having a great chicken sandwich, because there's lots of other people who also believe in similar values that work for him that disagree with him. So that's what I think make great leaders, is they're firm in who they are and what they stand for, that they're willing to stand up for it and put their money where their mouth is, or, put their values where the operations are. And I think that's an important distinction. And we don't have enough of that. We don't have enough of that. Right now, we have a lot of people yelling at each other. We have a lot of people saying, we say this in the C-suite a great deal. My job isn't to convince you whether you're right or wrong. My job is just to understand you. And I think we had more understanding in this world, we'd get along a lot better. Because, one of the things I found in this country, I mean, you can vote for Donald Trump if you want, or you can vote for another candidate that might represent your views a little bit greater. But nonetheless, that's the choice that we have, right?
Yeah. Wow. So values to many are kind of immutable though, Jeffrey. And how do we make that shift when we maybe realize, well, maybe that value isn't really the value that we have, or maybe that value is hurting people and we don't agree with that. How do we make that pivot to be a true hero and to put those people first?
Dude, then that's the cool, that you just said another whole chapter in the book, which is pick a side. Pick a side. There's nothing wrong with picking a side. These guys pick sides. It's okay to pick a side. I mean, Starbucks, for instance, do you know that in certain places in this country, that Starbucks is a fairly liberal company, right? We'd all agree that they're fairly liberal. I mean, they're from Seattle. Well, that says enough right there, right? Just, I'm having fun with anybody from Seattle that's watching or listening right now. But do you know that in certain places you can walk in with a gun visibly strapped to your body in a Starbucks?
I didn't know that.
Yes, because in some states you're allowed to do that. Now, whether or not you believe in that or not, the Howard Schultz and that company has said whatever the law says. We might disagree with it. And I do know that in some communities they have a national gun day or something, and people will march down the street carrying AR-15s and SKs and all this other type of assault weapons, because they're allowed to do that. And you know where they go? They go into a Starbucks. And they do that to be able to show that they can do that, because that's what the law says they can do. And by the way, Starbucks says, we will represent the laws of our community. I think that's a unique position. They picked a side. Now, you might say, Starbucks, oh my gosh, why would you do this, right? I can't do business with you. Yet they picked a side that says whatever the law says, that's what we will do. And I think that's a great way for a company to be able to walk that line. Now, they could choose to say no, okay, but they would violate the law, right? I mean, so there's a lot of different things you have to play. And so one of the things I said about, when I wrote this book, was in the middle of the Trump administration, and I said one of the great things about Trump. Now, there's a lot of things that I don't agree with him. I mean, by the way, I was a judge on Celebrity Apprentice for 3 years. He's been a friend of mine in the past. But he's batshit crazy. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I think that's what got him elected and why a lot of people like him. But what I said in the book, and what I still believe today, one of the best things about him is he made people pick a side. All right. Now, for years, we went along with politicians. We just said that's the way politics are. And we never really truly pick sides. We're picking sides now. And our interaction of living in our values had led us to that position, and to the election of Donald Trump. And now we're saying, no, or I want to stand for this, or I want to be like this. And so that's what I think is important for business leaders to do too. Yeah, pick a side. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, is your company going to be in the middle of all the politics? No, I don't think that's appropriate all the time. For some companies, without question, they're founded that way. Let's look at REI is a great example, where they said that we're going to stand for certain things. If you're a green company, if you're a non-GMO food company, I mean, there's lots of different things I think that make sense for you to do, because that's part of your problem that you're trying to solve, right? But if your problem you're trying to solve is to create a widget, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to get active in the political things or active in those things. So it's really about what are your values and what do you want to do and what problem you're trying to solve.
That's a very interesting way to look at picking a side that I haven't really considered, Jeffrey. I like that, right? If we can align that to our value, regardless maybe of whether or not that's politically prescient or not, that offers some value there. And then our employees know where we stand. And I think that's going to be more important than ever as we see that, to your point, a lot of companies' value is to actually live by a value of REI outside. Okay, if it takes care of the outside, that's going to be our value. But a lot of companies, though, I think are squishy, Jeffrey. They're not picking sides. Well, and so what's the damage of that?
Well, I think you're going to get the crap you've been getting, right? You're going to get the results that you're getting. I think it's up to leaders to take hard positions or make hard decisions. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, if you're on public, I'm a member of 12 different boards, and 4 of those are public companies. Well, when you're on a public company board, you're getting sued all the time. And I remember I was on one board and it wasn't going very well. And it was really tough, and we're getting sued. We're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal because the board has taken on the chairman of the company because of what he's trying to do. He's trying to buy the company without going through the proper steps. I won't say steal the company, but he was going to get it at a greatly reduced price. And we didn't think that was the fair thing to do for the shareholders. So 3 of the 5 board members said, no, we're not doing that. And so as a result, we suspended our pay, did all this, and I'm losing my entire investment because the stock is plummeting. I'm getting sued by the shareholders who I'm trying to protect. I'm getting sued by the chairman that we're trying to stop, right? And then it's costing me in all kinds of meetings, money, and everything else. I'm on vacation in Ireland, and I'm up at 3:00 in the morning on the frickin' phone, So whatever we have to do, because that's what you do. And my wife said, "Why are you doing?" I said, "Well, it's what good people do." If good people, if people, don't stand up and do these things, then you're going to get the results that you deserve. And so I think it's important for us to kind of think through that when you're doing it. I mean, I'll give you a good example. I'm on a board for a new Hispanic media company. Now everybody looks at me and says, "Jeff, you're not Hispanic." No, but I'm a great marketer. I know this business. I know the podcast. I know the TV business really well. And by the way, I'm the only Democrat, non-Republican on the entire board of directors who's not to the far right. Okay. I'm a conservative Democrat. I'm what they would call a blue dog Democrat without question. Most people think I'm a Republican, but my politics were from way back. We're from West Virginia and working for Senator George McGovern and then Tom Daschle. So these are my roots. A populist. I'm more of a populist. For those that know what that means from way back of that conservative but yet populist, agrarian kind of thing. So anyway, I'm on this board and people are like appalled. Why? I said, well, if you look at Hispanics, which is one of the largest populations in the United States, soon to be the majority population in the United States, they're underserved. And if you look at how they're served, most of them are seen as Latino, and you call most Latinx. They're being called Latinx. If you go up to most Latinos and call them Latinx, they'll punch you in the mouth. So because that's just not it's a white man's term that's made up for Hispanics. So, and if you look at their political spectrum, it's not over here to the left, it's way over here to the right. It's to the right of center. And yet their views haven't been known. Well, I'm a great marketer and I hopefully a fairly good business person. I see a marketplace. So when they said yes, and I also believe that everybody has a right to a voice. And if you don't give people a right to the voice, then it collapses the system or people are taken advantage of. And I really have a hard time with that. So you will see me fight for the left. You'll see me fight for the right. You'll see me fight for everyone, but based on a set of clear values of what I believe in, like First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment. Most people would find it's interesting that I would be liberal on this, but conservative way over here on that, So, I think we need more of that, in business today, and I think mostly it's about just need to be better read, better educated, better and more tolerant, in terms of how we take care of people.
Wow. That's a lot there. So Jeffrey, if we want to get started being more of a hero leader, you talk about, people over profits, and people include work, who we serve, all the vendors that we work with, all of that. But let's say I'm in an organization that maybe isn't a hero organization, but I want to be a hero leader. Obviously, I could quit, go somewhere else. But how do I start that movement inside of my organization if I don't already have that?
I think getting aligned with the leadership of the company and what our values. Every company has values. They know what they are. And listen, I bought and sold hundreds of companies, 25 billion in transactions. I get it. And all of them have a mission vision statement of some kind. And then most companies will then say, well, here are our values. So the key is to focus around that. And I'll guarantee you a CEO of a company, head of HR, and any other officer is looking for employees and team members who want to care about the values of the company. You'll stand out if you were to say, Mr. CEO, Miss CEO, Mrs. CEO, I would love to work on the company and the values. I care about this company. I want to make it better. You would be like a poster child, because that just doesn't happen all the time. So it does happen. And when it does, then those people will skyrocket, be seen as real champions, and you could really help the business. So that's where you first start. You could reach right there. Or you could quit and start your own and focus one that's on values, Or, I think we're getting a great alignment today. I think a lot of what we're seeing with the employees today, we're saying, I'm done with that. I'm not playing that game. If you want me, then here's my values too. Now let's make a great culture. And that's what it's about. It's about building culture. I mean, culture takes a long time to build, but if first you get aligned around your values, all right, then you focus in on the mood and cadence of that business, of what you're going to look like and feel like and act like. Well, then you start to become a real company. And hopefully one of those good companies, not one of the bad companies. I mean, I mentioned mood, but mood's a very important thing in a company, and cadence too. If you ever watched like the old show, The West Wing, they had a cadence. Remember that? They were always moving fast. Well, if you ever been in the White House, which I have done, nobody moves like that. It was fake. It was all Hollywood, because nobody's like running around in the background, all that. It's a very quiet place, quite frankly. And not a lot of people rushing and bustling around. But if you ever walked into business, you can kind of just sit in the lobby and you just look around. You can kind of get a feel for the cadence of the business, right? Like I've been in American Express and top floor American Express, and it's a very heady place, quiet. No one's there. The security guard's over there in case I'm going to reach for a credit card or something. I don't know, pull out a MasterCard or Visa, wrestle me to the ground. But and then the mood, everybody talks about, hey, let's change the culture. First I work on mood in companies. As I said, I bought and sold hundreds of companies, and the first thing I always do is focus on the mood. Why? Because the mood is something I can impact faster than I can the culture, and then it impacts my cadence. Because when you go into businesses and people say it's cold in here, well, I always tell people work harder, you'll warm up. Kind of get them. Let's get this energy going. Let's figure it out. And or I'm tired. Well, you work harder, you'll wake up. All those kind of, that's my sayings all the time. But have you ever been to a great restaurant and the mood's really shitty? The waiters are snotty. Yeah,
sure.
The food is unbelievable, but you don't want to go back because it's just crap. But have you ever been to a bad restaurant? I mean, kind of a shitty food. It's not the best food in the world, but everybody has fun.
Yeah.
And you'll go back every week.
Heck yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Every week, and to the point where your wife goes, we're not going there anymore. But it's my favorite place, but I don't like the food. I go, but everybody's so nice. It's so great. They got scotch like this. They serve a scotch. It's this big. So anyway, that's my point. You have an impact. And so, culture, it takes a long time.
Yeah. But impacting the mood, though, is certainly something we can do from any angle. I think that's great. Any level.
Yeah, back when I was at Kodak, people used to come to me and say, Jeff, make us like we used to be. And I said, well, I don't look like I used to be. I don't look like I looked like when I was 20. I look better today than I did when I was 20. And then someone said, why would you say something like that? It's because I do. You have to have that attitude. You have to have that feeling, right? If I try to make you like I said, I can't make you cool when you dress like Elmer Fudd. Okay, you just can't. So, a brand is nothing but a promise delivered, and we're going to deliver a promise. What's our brand promise? What's our, what are we promising to people? And so if you look like Elmer Fudd, you'll be Elmer Fudd. And so, you don't go look like we used to be. Don't make us like we used to be. Don't go back, go forward. and make it better. And I think that's an important thing, that a great distinction that people need to make in their businesses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, great stuff, Jeffrey. The book is The Hero Factor. Lots of great stuff inside there, Jeffrey. So with that, you mentioned a quiz, though. Where do we go? Where do we send people so that they can take the quiz and understand their hero stuff?
Yeah, they just go right to Hayzlett.com, HAYZLETT.com. You can find the Hero Factor there, and the workbook's there. Everything's there.
Awesome. Awesome. So friends, go to Hayzlett.com, check it out, get a copy of The Hero Factor, and get to know Jeffrey Hayzlett.
Or email me. Here's my email at Jeffrey.Hayzlett@Hayfensuitenetwork.com. Email me. I'll send it to you.
There you go. There you go. That's great too. So cool. Yeah. So if you're watching this, you'll see it's on the bottom of the screen there, Jeffrey.Hayzlett@C-suitenetwork.com, or go to Hayzlett.com. Check that out. Jeffrey, it is always fun to talk to you. Always insightful. Thanks for being a hero leader, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you. And keep doing what you're doing. This has been a great podcast. You've always had great content.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate you. Here we go.